Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and Coats Thread Company has come out with a follow-along paper piece pattern. There's 5 blocks, and it's great colors with a beautiful black background that's really going to shine. The finished quilt is going to be 45 inches by 45 inches, and it's a follow-along pattern, which is great. So I'm going to be making this pattern, and I hope you follow along. Today we're going to talk about paper piecing, how to paper piece, what you're going to need, and the setup at the machine. And we are going to make block 1. The fabric they've chosen to go with this is Free Spirit Solids, and they're all beautiful, beautiful colors with a nice dark black background. It's going to really make those colors pop. When you go online, you're going to be able to print out the directions. And the first one is general information, which is really, really good to know. And for the fabric, mostly you're going to need fat quarters, and there's quite a few of them. So what I like to do is mark my fabrics. You probably have seen in a previous video where I take the little flathead pins and I mark them with all the letters of the alphabet. And that is what I'm going to use to mark the fabrics. So each of the fabrics has a pin with one of the letters of the alphabet. And on the fabric list, I have the corresponding letter, so I'm able to always see what color I'm going to use. And because this pattern is a paper piece pattern, it's very important to have your printer set properly when you go to print out the pattern. Be sure to make sure that you have checked on your printer actual size, and that's going to print out all of the patterns that you're going to need at the right size. You will not need to scale the paper. And when you print out the pattern, you're going to see a little square that says 1 by 1. You need to test and make sure that that is 1 inch by 1 inch. And then you're going to know that this is going to fit together perfectly. The first pattern consists of 2 pieces because the pattern's not long enough to get on the paper. So you're going to have one end, and this end, which would go on the other side, is on the back. So when you go to print them out, you'll be able to take that top piece and glue it right down. And when you're done, you're going to have a piece like this, and you're going to need 4 of these because 4 will make 1 square. You can print out the patterns on just regular printer paper. However, you can get a special paper for paper piecing or foundation piecing. And it comes in 2 different sizes, which is nice, especially if you get a long piece like this. The difference between the 2 papers is the white regular paper that you have is very slippery. This paper here is not so slippery, so it holds the fabric a little bit better. This also is a little bit porous, so the ink stays more in the paper and doesn't float on top, so you don't have any transfer of the ink. The other thing is this paper is a little bit thinner, so it's easier to tear away. But you still can use just regular paper if you'd like. Now you can get a thread that is actually made for paper piecing. Coats does make this thread. It's very thin, so it doesn't add any bulk, and it really helps the paper tear away. And when you're going to do this, if you use a Microtech needle, it works great. I like to use an 80-12. The point is very, very sharp on this, so it's going to pierce it nice, and it's going to leave a nice hole that you can tear away. And when you set up your machine for the stitches, a lot of machines start at a 2.5. Make that stitch smaller at about a 2. The reason is it's going to put more holes per inch, makes it easier to rip off the paper, and it makes it stronger. The other thing I really like using is an add a quarter ruler, and you can get them in 3 different sizes, depend on the size of the block you want. What the ruler is a ruler with a lip on it, and that lip is the 1/4 inch. And when I use this, I just take a piece of template plastic. I'm going to use this together. 2 other things that I like using, and this is a pressing surface from Steady Betty, and it has this very unique fabric on it that when you put the fabric down, the fabric does not move, so it's really easy to press on. They're small, they're portable. I can keep this right beside my machine, so I'm not having to get up a lot. And the other thing I like to have right beside my machine with the pressing station is a small iron. Now this one is made by Clover. It has a solid back, so there's no steam involved, so I don't have to worry about the water. It also has a nice tiny little point that I'm going to be able to do some pressing with. So I have my 4 pattern pieces ready to go. Now I'm going to make an extra one. And this one I'm going to use just to keep me in order when I go to do this. And I'm going to cut out each piece. And when I've cut out the little pieces, I'm going to cut the fabric to go with those pieces. That way I know I have the right color and the right size. And I make sure that I cut a lot more than 1/4 inch all the way around. So here's my setup. I have my little ironing station here, and on this little table I have a mat that I can cut on, and all the pattern pieces as close to the pattern as I can get. Plus I have all of my pattern pieces here. I also have a little lamp just so that I can see what I'm doing. I'm also going to have my add 1/4 ruler, that little piece of template plastic, and it must have a nice straight edge, and my rotary cutter. Now I'm going to be able to sew all of these blocks continuous without having to get up until all of the blocks are done. When you paper piece, you're going to use the back side as a sewing guide, but the fabric is going to go on the clean side of the paper, and it's going to be with the right side up. And we're going to start with an order, and number 1 is what we're going to start with. So I have my number 1 piece here. I know exactly where it's going to go, but I need to put it on this side. And if I hold this up to some light, I'm going to be able to see the fabric from the other side. And this is going to be the right side up. And when you find the placement, you can either pin it or just put a little dollop of glue. For the first one, I just like to put a little drop of glue on either side just to hold it on the paper. So number 1 is already done. The next piece I'm going to add is number 2. So the seam between 1 and 2 is the seam that I'm going to stitch on. And this is where this piece of plastic comes in handy. The seam that I'm actually going to use is the seam I put that piece of plastic on, right along that seam, and I'm going to fold the paper back. And I'm going to be able to see that I have fabric peeking out. I like to take that piece that is sticking out and cut it at 1/4 inch. And that's where the 1/4 inch ruler comes in. I'm able just to put that 1/4 inch lip right against that piece of paper and trim off that extra fabric. When I go to get my next piece, it's going to be easier to match up that edge. So I know my piece is going to go on this way because the wrong side is going to touch the back of the fabric. So if you just take it with your hand and pull it underneath and flip it over, then you're going to know how that is going to line up. So I know that these 2 sides are going to be stitched together. Taking one piece at a time, I'm going to take that edge and move it over and match this edge. I can now pin this onto the paper. I'm going to be stitching along this edge, so I want to keep my pins out of the way of my stitching line. Now when I turn it over, I'm going to be able to stitch right along that line. And I like to start a little bit off of the sewing line, go onto the sewing line, and come just a little bit off. Now that 1/4 inch is done. I could take the pins out, and because my pressing station is right beside me, I'm going to be able to take that and just press it over. So I have that one seam that now has a perfect 1/4 inch. If you turn it over and hold it up to a light source, you want to make sure that that number 2 covered all of the number 2. Our next piece is going to be number 3. I take my piece of plastic again and I put it on my line between 2 and 3 and fold the paper back. Now you have stitched a little bit into number 3. That's fine. The paper is going to just be able to peel back. So I put it down and I'm able just to pull that stitch back and cut my 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to be able to take my number 3 piece. So the right side is going to be in the palm of my hand. This is the wrong side. I'm going to put it right where I know it is. Turn the paper over. These 2 seams are the seams that need to go together. I'm going to be able to match up that seam, flip it over. I know this is going to be my stitch line, so I'm going to keep my pins out of the way. When I turn the paper over, I'm going to be able to stitch on line number 3. My seams have been done. I'm able to take the pins out, just press. By cutting that 1/4 inch off first, it accomplishes two things. Number one, it helps you line up your fabric. And the other thing it does is it gives you that nice 1/4 inch seam. Of course, the next piece I'm going to do is number 4. And I'm going to continue this all the way. Now you will have that the pattern is going to go in one direction and then the pattern is going to go in the other. It will start with a center point and go out a lot of times. So you might not find the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You might find it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and back and forth. Just follow the number lines. So I have the 4 blocks done. And well, they sort of look like this, but when they're trimmed off, they will look exactly like this. You're going to have some sides that are loose. What you can do is just do a little row of stitching right off of the corner. And that's going to stabilize that, so when you sew it together, you won't have to worry about those corners flipping. When you turn it over, you'll have a dotted line. The dotted line is the cutting line. The solid line is the stitch line. Now it looks like the block. Keep the paper on until you get it all sewn together. We now have 4 units with perfect little points. They're going to be sewn together in sets of 2. When the 2 seams have been sewn together, you can take out a little bit of the paper just in that seam where you join them. I like to take the center piece paper and fold it back. I don't need to remove it right now. Just folding it back will prevent it from getting caught in that corner seam. So I'm going to pull it back on both sides and match up the seams and sew your final line. And your block is done. Now you can remove all of the little paper pieces. To remove the paper, I like to go section by section. When the one section's done, I'm able to lift up that paper, fold it on that last seam, and that paper piecing thread is really strong. It just makes it come off quite nicely. When all the paper has been removed, you now can take this to the iron and press it. So we now have block 1 done. I do hope you join me for block 2 so that we can learn new tips and techniques in finishing the block. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.